Theme 2: Attitudes towards the State. So, when we think about kings of ancient India, we think of the Guptas, the Mauryas, the Shatavahanas, and we imagine how wonderful it must have been to live under those kings. But in the Panchatantra, the king cuts a very sorry figure, and you find that attitude towards the state in ancient India were no different than the way modern Indians think of their contemporary politicians. So, what attitudes do you find among modern Indians with respect to the Indian state? Well, half of us are afraid of the state, right? We don't want anything to do with the state. We are afraid of our politicians, we do not trust them, or the courts, the police, the bureaucracy. But then you have the opposite kind of people, those who are very interested in engaging with the state. Why? In order to benefit from it, to exploit it, to earn their livelihood from it. The state is wealthy and powerful, right? So they want to work with it in order to become wealthy and powerful themselves. And you will find exactly these two kinds of people: one who is afraid of the state and wants to stay away from it, and the other who wants to engage with the state in order to gain from it in the Panchatantra. In the first Tantra, Mitra Bhed, the separation of friends, you will find the first kind of people in Sanjivaka and Karataka, while the second kind of people in Damanaka. So Sanjivaka's and Karataka's view is that kings are cruel, they are unreliable, they employ criminals and wicked people as their guards and ministers. And for that reason, no decent person would want to serve a king. On the other hand, Damanaka's view is that even if this is so, an intelligent person can bring the king under his control, and then he can use that power to favor his community and to inflict harm upon his enemies. So, this is what we find in politics even today, right? Then you have the story of Dantila and Gorabha, in which Dantila is a rich merchant and superintendent of the city, and there is a verse which describes him as a genius because he is able to meet the expectations of the king as well as the people. The point being that the interests of the state are opposed to the interests of the society. Now, this Gorabha is the king's sweeper, and on one occasion, Dantila humiliates him. So he wants to seek revenge. Now, Gorabha has access to the king. He could have appealed to him for justice, but he doesn't. Instead, he conspires against Dantila. He poisons the ears of the king and makes him get rid of Dantila. Later, Dantila finds out what has happened, but he too does not appeal to the king for justice. Instead, he bribes Gorabha, and with his help, he recovers the king's favor. So, what you see here is that in order to address their grievances, the poor man resorts to deceit and the rich man resorts to bribery. The state is not seen as an institution where you can seek justice. In fact, there is not a single story in which the king is shown to act justly. The king only cares about his power. The same thing you find in another story, the lapwing and the ocean. The lapwing is a very small bird that apparently lays eggs on the ocean shore. So in this story, the ocean steals the eggs of the lapwing bird. Then the birds unite and fight against the ocean, but are unable to defeat him. So they decide to take the matter to their king, who is Garuda. Now, the lapwing bird could have gone by himself and demanded justice, but that does not happen. Instead, the birds decide that they will do a Mahajana Virodh, that is, a mass agitation. They go together and put pressure on Garuda to retrieve the eggs of the lapwing. Then Garuda decides to intervene on behalf of the lapwing. So the idea is that even if you want the king to execute justice, the people have to demonstrate their power. Then finally, let us consider the famous lion and the hare story. In this case, we have a king who is mercilessly killing all the animals, which is a metaphor for plundering all the subjects of his kingdom. And so the animals go to him and teach him the Rajadharma, that he should protect and nurture the subjects, and in return for which he can collect tax from the subjects. The metaphor for the tax is that each of the animal species will send one among them for his meal. The king agrees to this contract, or Samaya Dharma, and then all the animals start living peacefully. But then, when it is the hare's turn to die, as we know, he gets the lion killed. Now, the way the story is told, we feel sympathy for the hare, right? Obviously, the hare has a right to save his life. But remember that that is only a metaphor. The hare actually represents a person whose turn it is to pay the tax. And he thinks, why should I pay tax? Instead, I will kill the king, that is, destroy the state. Then we are free. We don't have to pay any tax. So, this is actually a story that promotes anarchy, where the state is at worst an oppressor and at best an unnecessary overhead. So, here again we see tension between state and society. And though a contract or Samaya Dharma was put in place, everyone is happy when the lion is killed by the hare.